through the Bible. Exodus 22, the protection of property. And we will divide chapter 22 into two parts, because one talks about property and the other has to do with social responsibility. If a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he must pay back 5 head of cattle for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. If the thief is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. But if it happens after sunrise, he is guilty of bloodshed. A thief must certainly make restitution, but if he has nothing, he must be sold to pay for his theft. If the stolen animal is found alive in his possession, whether ox or donkey or sheep, he must pay back double. If a man grazes his livestock in a field or vineyard and lets them stray, and they graze in another man's field, he must make restitution from the best of his own field or vineyard. If a fire breaks out and spreads into thorn bushes so that it burns stalks of grain or standing grain or the whole field, the one who started the fire must make restitution. If a man gives his neighbor silver or goods for safekeeping, and they are stolen from the neighbor's house, the thief, if he is caught, must pay back double. But if the thief is not found, the owner of the house must appear before the judges to determine whether he has laid his hands on the other man's property. In all cases of illegal possession of an ox, a donkey, a sheep, a garment, or any other lost property about which somebody says, "This is mine," both parties are to bring their cases before the judges. The one whom the judges declare guilty must pay back double to his neighbor. If a man gives a donkey, an ox, a sheep, or any other animal to his neighbor for safekeeping, and it dies or is injured or is taken away while no one is looking, the issue between them will be settled by the taking of an oath before the Lord that the neighbor did not lay hands on the other person's property. The owner is to accept this, and no restitution is required. But if the animal was stolen from the neighbor, he must make restitution to the owner. If it was torn to pieces by a wild animal, he shall bring in the remains as evidence, and he will not be required to pay for the torn animal. If a man borrows an animal from his neighbor, and it is injured or dies while the owner is not present, he must make restitution. But if the owner is with the animal, the borrower will not have to pay. If the animal was hired, the money paid for the hire covers the loss. In this section, we have property that is talked about. And notice that it is both the animal kingdom that is mentioned and the property that a farmer would normally have in his possession. If a person steals animals, he must pay back double or triple for what he has stolen. But notice that if a person breaks into a house in the dark and is killed, the person who kills him is not liable. However, If it is in the light after the day has come, then he is not allowed to kill the person because he can identify him and get his property back that way. Then if a thief steals property but is unable to pay back for what he has stolen, then he himself is sold to pay for his theft. Now this is where one of the types of slavery comes in. The person is sold for a while. He must serve as a slave, and then after that time, after he has compensated the person for the stolen goods, he is allowed to go free. If he has the animal in his possession, he has to pay back double. If a man grazes his livestock in a field and is not careful about where the animal goes, then he must compensate for anything the animal eats in another field. Also, fire is common, and if a person has set fire to a field, and this was one of the ways in which they actually helped the growth of the grain, and the fire gets out of control and burns in another field, then the person who has started the fire is responsible and has to pay back from his own holdings. And then we read about accepting objects from somebody else for safekeeping. And if that object is stolen, then the person who's had it in his possession has to take an oath, go to the authorities, and swear that he himself had not taken it. But the one whom the judges determine is guilty of the theft, he has to pay back double. If an animal is killed by a wild animal, then he brings what is left of the animal, and that then clears him of the responsibility that he has to pay double. Also, if you hire an animal to do work and the owner is not with you, you are responsible for any injury that comes to the animal. But if the owner of the animal is present, he has a responsibility for the animal. So you can see that this is well thought out. Who is responsible for the property? And how do we make compensation for it?